Hello and welcome to the deep dive video about the new modular system for instrument building that I've been building. So there is a shorter video about this, and if you want to get the overview, I really recommend watching that. The link is down in the description, but just in case, here's a quick clip. So I patched together a few modules to build this kind of dub techno generative patch. Let's just hear how that sounds. I've dialed up a few patterns and I can switch between them here. Okay, but now I'm going to plug in a controller module called Loop Pack. I just drag it in here, drop it there, connect it to the brain, go back to the panel, and here you can see the Loop Pack controller, which transforms the instrument into something that I can play on my keyboard and my controller. So I can just play the patterns by hitting keys, can switch between different patterns, let go of a key and it goes back to the original pattern, a bit like playing a monosynth. And I can tweak the macros here on my controller. Let go of the keys, and then when I hit a key again, it just flips back to the original pattern. So I've just instantly transformed this generative patch into a performable instrument. So this is a working prototype of something that I've been building. This whole thing really is about the craft of instrument building. So I first started out, my musical journey started out as a producer, writing tracks in a DAW. That was my craft, and basically I got into instrument building, and I see it as my craft today, and I really enjoy it as a craft, and I would love more people to enjoy it. I've spent almost 30 years doing this, and so all the experience that I've had over those 30 years, I'm pouring it into this system, and my hope is that to make the entire process of instrument building a flow state process. So, you know, from building your system, choosing your instruments, choosing how to control them, building up material with them, curating that material, deciding how you're going to present that material, all of that. I want that to be something that is flow statey, and that has not been my experience in building instruments. There's been a lot of hard things that I've had to solve. And yeah, in building this, I'm trying to solve those hard things so you don't have to think about them. So yeah, this is a working prototype. You can get your hands on it now. This is a sort of pre-launch campaign. So for 49 quid, you can get it now. The fully launched version is going to be £69. And if you get the pre-launch version, you also get the final version. So I think that's quite a good deal. I think it's quite a good deal. Okay, so this is a bit more off-piste. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I've just got a list of things that I want to get through. But basically, I'm going to talk through all the modules I've built. I'm going to run you through how they work. And in the process of that, I hope that I will touch on most of the things about you know, how I've built this system, the choices I've made, the capabilities I've put into it, etc. And then also I'll go on to look at more the sort of the roadmap, what I'm going to be building next, what I'm going to be building for the launch, and also how this kind of system unfolds after that. You know, my idea is that for this to become a kind of ecosystem with lots of different people kind of engaging with this ecosystem at different levels, right the way up to, you know, building your own modules, offering those modules, like, you know, to other people through a shop, etc. Anyway, we'll get to that. Before I waffle on too much, let's look at some modules. So, first of all, let's look at Chowning. Okay, I'm going to drag this into the structure here. I wire it up from channel 1, wire the input to channel 1, wire the output to channel 1 on the mixer, and it is immediately making sound. I mean, that's one of the things that was really important to me, is like stuff should start happening as early as possible. So, you don't have to like plug something in and patch in 10 patch cables before you can get a fart sound. Chowning is a very simple FM synth. Let's have a quick look at the structure inside it. No, I'll save that till later because it might get a bit overwhelming. So it's just a two operator FM synth, a carrier and a modulator, and we've just got 20 knobs here on the module, which are controlling the pattern generation and the synthesis. So it's like super mini. So let's roll the dice. So every module has a dice icon here on the module, and then also on its mixer channel once you've plugged it in. So let's hit the dice icon there. Okay, that's very minimal. Let's turn up the intensity, which means that they'll be firing more events. Let's maybe turn the modulation down. Okay, there we go. So it's super simple here. You've just got the modulation from the operator to the carrier, which just gives you a brighter sound. But then you can also modulate, you can also send signal back from the carrier to the modulator, which gives you weird sort of FM feedback effects. So it can get quite sort of unruly quite quickly. I mean, that's something that I quite like trying to achieve with the system is, you know, the smallest number of controls possible to get the biggest impact, I guess. Okay, let's dial that down. Super simple. You can change the pitch of the pattern, and then this pattern knob here changes the maths that the algorithm. It's the algorithm that is calculating the pattern. So it's got. I think are we going in threes here? No. Anyway, let's take it. Okay, this is like a two beat rhythm, super simple. Let's tweak the trigger cycle. So trigger cycle is basically, that's the mass that is calculating the gates. So this is like the velocity values that are coming out. So then you've got these knobs here that change the amount of modulation that the synth parameters are getting. Change the pattern of that modulation. So you can get some pretty wild variations very quickly. And again, just roll the dice. That's quite wild, but also quite nice. Okay, so we've got Chowning. Now let's look at Sawbird. So I used Sawbird a lot in the other video, but here it is again, just so you can see. Plug it from channel 2 into channel 2. There we go, we've got Sawbird sawbirding. Let's change the pitch. It's really kind of nice, just a little duet between Chowning and Sawbird. Okay, so very similar thing. I mean, the actual pattern generators for both Chowning and Sawbird are exactly the same. It's just the synth engine that is different. This is Sawbird is subtractive, whereas Chowning is essentially additive. Well, FM, which is it additive? Yeah, it's kind of additive. Anyway, okay, so drums. Let's go through. So here's Aaron. You may get the reference why. So this is a snare drum generator. It's called Aaron. You may get the reference, or you may not get the reference. So you can see it shows up here on its mixer channel. Let's solo it, so we can hear what it's doing. Okay. So yeah, it's got, just like the Chowning and Sawbird, it's got a pattern generator and a sound generator. So you've got all the, you can change like the level of snap, change the length, make it shorter, make it less crisp. So let's leave it like that for now. Okay, so we've got our Aaron. Next up, we have Duffy. Duffy is a kick generator. Plug that in. We get kicks. Nice kicks. Let's do some randomising. Nice, some nice cheeky acid already. Let's change that snare pattern. Oh, nice. Is that a cumbia rhythm? Ish. Anyway, I don't know. I'm no expert on this stuff. Okay, Handmaid. Handmaid is a clap generator, so the same pattern generator as Aaron and Duffy, but a different sound engine. So something to point out now. There we go. Nice. That's pretty cool. The randomizer, so when you roll the dice on any of these modules, you're basically kind of crossbreeding pre-saved patterns. So it's not just firing kind of noise at all the parameters. It's actually, so each of these modules I've made about like 25 presets for the whole module. So that's covering the pattern generator and the sound generator. And when you roll the dice on them, it's basically kind of cross-pollinating. It's pulling different parameters from those different patterns. So it basically means that you can, it's almost like training an AI, but it's not training an AI. It's just like pulling from, you know, say it'll pull the snap parameter from one pattern, it'll pull the intensity parameter from another pattern, and it sort of splices them all together. So you get this kind of controlled randomization. So it always, hopefully, should make some kind of sense for for the type of sound source it is. And that's very intentional because, you know, I think one of the things that's really important when you're building instruments is to not be forced into. I think I think it's more important to sort of push users towards making choices rather than doing work, if you see what I mean. Because, I mean, you know, the way I find myself engaging with these systems is, engaging with any of the instruments I've built is, if I'm kind of presented with creative choices to make, that tends to kind of like lead me eventually into doing work, because by making those choices, I sort of focus in on some kind of aesthetic that I'm trying to get to, and in the process of making very simple choices, I start to understand the thing that I'm using, which then gives me more specific ideas about how I want to use it. So that's very much my kind of design principle behind all of these modules. It's like, make stuff that does stuff straight away, but also make it really easy to make that thing your own. So that's a whole principle that's like throughout this whole system. Okay, Handmaid. Now let's Hattersly. Hattersly does hi-hats. Of course Hattersly does hi-hats. Right, plug in Hattersly and we'll get hi-hats. Quite overpowering hi-hats. Let's randomize that. That's nice. That's very nice. Very, very nice hi-hats. Thank you very much for your hi-hats. Okay, and Skin. Skin is a sort of percussion synthesizer. Again, same engine, same pattern generator, different sound engine, and different presets that the dice is pulling from. So, Skin. Kind of cool, kind of funky. That's good for me. Right. Okay, samplers. So I had a go at making some kind of sampler module, or at least a module that could do stuff with samples for this release. It's really a proof of concept, this. It's called Schaefer, named after Pierre Schaefer. Like Chowning is named after John Chowning, who basically invented FM synthesis, or kind of, spearheaded its adoption. But it's quite experimental, this. And I have lots, basically, like, building modules that can process samples is an entire kind of like world of discovery to be explored. So this was just a very simple thing, just like, okay, something can be done, let's try and do that something. So I've got I've got some sample loaded in here. Let's roll the dice on that. I mean, it's quite nice because you can get little scatterings of textures that haven't been generated by these synth engines. It's quite hard to control, Schaefer. Well, that brings me on nicely to the state of the modules now and the state of the modules that will be in the launch bundle. So, I mean, the big thing to work on is the UI design and the UX. I mean, right now, the UI of these modules is it's pretty impenetrable. You really have to be quite determined to understand what's going on and get a handle on them. I mean, and that's something that I really want to solve. And I've got some quite clear ideas about how to do that, how to make them, much more intuitive. I mean, what's intuitive now is dropping in a module in here, connecting it up, rolling the dice, and getting some stuff that's happening. And then also, doing things like using macro controls, because the macro controls are mapped to all of the different parameters. So you can, for example, I can just like dial the decay down, attack down. The attack and decay of everything goes up and down. Turn the tone down. Cool. It's very easy to get lost in this. And also distracted in this video. So where was I? I was talking about the UX of the modules. Yeah. So there is some sort of significant work to be done. I mean, I'm pretty clear on what needs to be done to make these, make it much clearer. What controls are generating the patterns, what controls are generating the sounds, what controls are generating the sort of modulation between the pattern generator and the sounds. So that's probably one of the biggest bits of work that's going to be done between what you can get today and what you'll be able to get in a few months. Right, what have we got? DIDIMIDI. Okay, so there's a special instrument here. So another thing, this is very much a proof of concept, but something that felt really important to get into this release is something that will allow you to hook up other instruments that aren't made for this system into the system, because that, you know, from the feedback I got from Scapeshift, which was a sort of progenitor product to this system, was very much like, okay, cool, it's a generative system, but the sounds all sound like me, and you can't really change the sound sources. So this is a really important bit of this. Again, a bit like the sampler, or a bit like the whole topic of sampler modules. The topic of kind of modules that connect to external devices is another entire topic in its own right that needs to be covered. So here is a Juno emulator that's in the Reaktor user library. Here it is. Let's move its UI up there a bit. So I'm now going to use DIDIMIDI to connect up to this Juno instrument. So you can do this with basically any instrument from the Reaktor user library. To connect it up, you just need to open the properties of DIDIMIDI, go into connect, and internal instrument, go to Juno 60, and you can already hear that there is sound coming out of the Juno. So basically, I drop this instrument in, and I connect it in through its audio outputs into DIDIMIDI's audio inputs, and let's solo it now, so we can hear the Juno being played. Now you can also see. So actually, I've already done this before with this module, so it's already pre-mapped. But I have set this up to not just trigger notes, but also actually adjust parameters. So inside DIDIMIDI, I can change the decay time, and I can change the amount that these parameters are modified. So I can change the cutoff of the Juno. And with this mod knob, I can then introduce the kind of parametric modulation that this system has for all its internal modules. So it allows you to not just kind of play MIDI notes, but also kind of animate the sound of your third-party instrument as you're playing it. And of course we can. Oh no, this doesn't have any switches. So you can, mess around with the instrument on the front panel, on its panel as well. Turn the Juno chorus on, the classic. Add some noise. All right, let's roll the dice. Okay, take the solo off. There's quite a lot going on here now. Solo, all these other things. So here's a good point to maybe talk a bit about how the mixer. So there are various kind of like standard controller modules that come with this. These are so you've got. Right, let's get it straight. So you've got, there are two main types of modules in the system. There's one type, the ones that we've been messing with so far in this video, all the synths and the drum generators, the sampler, the MIDI module, and I'm going to show you some effects in a bit as well. But that's those are the sort of instrument and effects modules. But then you also have these controller modules, which are they're ways of kind of controlling the entire group of instruments that you've made. There are some kind of boilerplate ones that you'll want in pretty much all your instruments, because you need those for being able to control your instrument while you're making selections and building things. The two main ones really are transport and scale. You've got basic simple transport controls. So I can control playback, control the tempo, control swing, restart the clock, sync it to the host or not, all of that kind of standard stuff that you need. And then you've also got these scale controls, which this is quite kind of simple and reduced right now, and this is another thing that I'm going to be developing further to make a much deeper, more flexible, more powerful kind of whole pitch mapping function that will allow you to do all sorts of, to build crazy kind of music theory, complex harmonic mapping stuff, including microtonal things, scales that have more or less than 12 notes in an octave, all of that stuff. That's coming in the main version. But for now, this transport and scale module, you'll kind of want it in everything you're building. And then of course you've got the mixer module. This is, you'll also need that. You can actually, I've built it so you can actually still patch things without any of these controllers. It is designed to, like in the absence of like the mixer or the transport or scale controllers, that it will still, like the audio engine will run, you'll plug a module in, it will make sound, it's just you won't be able to control its level. So you want to have the mixer. And so right now on the mixer, you see things pop up, but there aren't any names for any of these devices on the channels. That is something that's going to come in the final version. I've got all the hooks in the back end for kind of modules to register their names and register the names of all their parameters and share that all over the structure. So likewise here, you can see on the modules, it tells you which channel it's on and which module number it is. Which is, it's really handy for kind of identifying where things are. But, again, to come back to this whole idea of just making things really instant and really controllable and really understandable at all times, I think having more labels on the mixer. So like each of these channels, like it says what modules he's got in it, and if you've got a bunch of modules, then it'll tell you what the order is, and you'll probably be able to. So the idea is really that in many cases, depending on how kind of bespoke you want to go with your instrument, one way of interacting with the system is literally just plonking modules in and not even looking at the individual module UIs, that you can basically do everything up here just by spinning these randomizers, rolling the dice, and changing things with the macro controls. It's really the whole idea here is kind of building a system that you can engage at any level, from just like getting an entire patch that's already been made with this, plugging your keyboard controller and just mashing things and twiddling knobs, with no prior knowledge at all. Right the way up through choosing your own modules, wiring them in, dialing up your own very specific settings in the individual modules, and then something that I'm going to touch on later in this video, actually going the whole hog and building your own modules for the system from scratch. Right, where were we? Okay, more on modules. Let's do some effects. So yeah, we've got a whole bunch of instruments here. Let's go back, or play it back again, and let's just have some chowning. Chowning is very quiet. Oh, that is very... Okay, right, that's nice. Let's put some effects in. Some effects. Let's start with Baikal. Baikal is a very simple reverb. It's quite long. I mean, if you've been following my work for a while, there's actually it's available on my site now for free. This instrument called Slow, which is a very long reverb that I made. This is before the days of Supermassive. If you remember Supermassive. Well, sorry, no. Of course you remember Supermassive. Everyone remembers Supermassive because it's amazing. But that's like become the sort of the default go-to very long reverb. But I basically built this to be a sort of Supermassive style, very long reverb. And here you can, I mean, it does, to my ears, it sounds quite a lot like Supermassive in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's just, I mean, you've got to have a reverb. You've got to have a reverb. So next up we've got Pyongyang, which is a dub delay. Let's plug Pyongyang in here. A reverb going into a dub delay. Who'd have thought it? Dubby, wandering textures galore. Yeah, Pyongyang's quite powerful actually, if I may say so myself. There's a lot of different flavours of dub delay you can get, from sort of wild feedback through to sort of much more, very long delays, quite tight filter bands. You can dial the resonance up really high, so you basically kind of like whistles. I don't know, anyway. I like it. It's good for doing dubby stuff. So those are the two kind of like standard effects. Let's dial up Roisin, and I'm going to put Roisin behind after Schaefer. So where's Schaefer? I think Schaefer's here. Here he is. So Roisin is a resonator effect. It's basically 4 sort of car plus strong style resonators. So I mean tuned comb filters basically, with a damping circuit in each resonator, and then you've also got like after the 4 tuned resonators, there's a filter circuit with an envelope generator, and as you can see, Roisin has a trigger input, and you can also see that all of these synths have a trigger output. So you can, well actually let's just, so now you can hear Schaefer, the weird sampler, going into Roisin. Let's put the module there so it's next to Roisin. Give it a bit of a restart. So basically, each of these modules has a trigger output. which you can then wire into the trigger inputs for effects that have triggers. And you don't have to use the instrument that is going into the effect. You could use any other instrument. So it's basically kind of like side chaining, but you can side chain all sorts of things. It could be filter envelopes, it could be delays, it could be, yeah, all sorts of stuff. So here's a good time to talk about another thing. So right now, these trigger outputs and inputs are pretty dumb and basic. They don't really do much whatsoever, apart from sending a trigger count message, which can ping whatever envelope or thing is being triggered in the destination effect. But I've got a whole, basically this control input. So every instrument and every effect is going to have a control input and output. And over that, those outputs are actually going to share a whole ton of different data from, transport data, transport state, levels, trigger levels, pitch offsets, basically like loads of different data. So you can really easily, so you can create modules which can then control, basically like conduct other modules, and, not just by sending triggers, by doing a whole bunch of different stuff, and all that will happen kind of automatically under the surface, like the way that these modules are doing with everything else right now. I mean there's a lot happening under the surface. It's kind of outside the scope of this video. This video is already really long, and it would be like 5 or 6 hours by the time I'd actually gone into exactly how all of this is happening under the hood. But yeah, I've had to bend Reaktor hard. Reaktor has been bent hard to make this work. Anyway, I digress. The cool thing is you've got effects, they've got triggers. You can trigger those effects from any instrument in your patch. So let's roll the dice on Roisin. That's nice, isn't it? Right. Let's have a look finally at Sinkhole. So Sinkhole is another triggered effect. This is a kind of like, it's sort of experimental. It's like a glitchy filter effect. So let's trigger it. Let's trigger it from skin. So it kind of filters things. But then also it's got this kind of like glitchy delay effect thing. Nice. So you can get, it's quite wild and uncontrollable, like a lot of these modules so far, because they're like, okay, I just want to know that this thing can be built and that it broadly sounds cool. Sinkhole is, it's hard to control. It's a real loose cannon, which has its own advantages, but when it's its own thing. But when this is fully launched. To be honest, what I might even do with Sinkhole is actually split the two. There's like 3 different sections. You've got phase distortion, kind of like like a high pass and low pass filter with resonance, and an amplitude envelope for gating the signal, and this kind of like glitch delay effect. There's a whole bunch of effects in there, and I might even break them out into separate modules. Not quite sure yet, but the way I will make that decision is it cool? Does it have an instant high impact effect? And is it really controllable? Because I think right now that's where Sinkhole is not controllable. It's all of the former. It's the first 3, but it's not controllable. But still, you can get cool stuff out of it. Right, that I think has covered all the modules. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yes, 13 modules. Okay, so controller modules. Yeah, like I said, they're in here you've got the four kind of standard controller modules that I think you'll need for pretty much every patch. Let's move patterns over here, move some of these modules around a bit on the UI. Actually, here's a good time to talk about another thing that I think is really powerful. I think why Reaktor is really good to build this system, because you've got a very clear demarcation between the structure and the user interface, and that is something that is really unique to Reaktor. I mean, that's not to say that, like Maximus P's solution where you can kind of lock the panel and hide things is also cool. And yeah, you can like build, there are ways to do it in Max. But with Reaktor, it's super neat. You have these kind of instrument modules, and every instrument has its own UI. So when I drop, for example, Baikal in here, it shows up here in the structure. I can wire it in like wherever I want to wire it. But then its interface shows up here in the panel, and that's really unique to Reaktor, and I think that's really powerful. I mean, it's not perfect. There are still, there are issues. You can't scale these interfaces, which is deeply annoying. But still, you can, so you have to do a bit of scrolling around on these, particularly once your structure gets a bit big. But it's very doable, very livable with, and I think very powerful. And also, we're saying that with these controller modules, the whole idea is that you can create this sprawling interface, and then you can this sprawling patch of lots of different instruments with lots of different controls, and then you can basically just use a handful of very focused controller modules to basically forget about all of that and build a very focused performance instrument or sound installation or loop pack for your DAW, whatever you want to do. So yeah, the four big modules the big controller modules that you'll need for pretty much every patch is the mixer, of course. It's really powerful, really important. Stop playback. Patterns is also really important. I'll show you this very shortly. Transport and scale, as I was talking about, and the macro encoders. So as you can see, those four controller modules are plugged into the brain here. So let's talk about patterns. I mean, it's super simple right now. Let's say I like this pattern. I just hit add, and it saves a pattern down there. And let's roll the dice on a bunch of stuff. Get something randomly different. So another thing that is really missing here is a global randomize button, and that's another thing that will probably be in the mix. It's going to be somewhere in one of the four main controller modules you need. Is just a big global randomize knob, randomize button, where you can randomize all of the modules. And I'm just dialing up random stuff here, but you can really go to town with all the modules and dialing in their patterns. But I'm kind of doing this just as a sort of, just to demonstrate really for now. To get enough patterns that I can then show you what you can do with various different controllers. Okay, so I've gotten some patterns now, but I'm still very much in, I don't really have that much hands-on control now, and there's, I'm still, you know, the patch is set up to be in kind of exploration mode, where I'm just like exploring combinations of modules, then exploring different patterns that I've built up with those modules. But now I'm going to add a controller module. So there's 10 of these. I'm not going to go through all of them actually. There's 5 experimental ones. So that, okay, there is actually a global randomize controller that I made. Okay, let's chuck this one in. It's called Chaos. And the reason it's called Chaos is because it's not using the sort of parameter constrained randomization. What Chaos is doing, I mean, literally is injecting pure noise into selected parameters in the patch. So it does tend to sound, well, it just sounds really chaotic. Let's just hit. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes it comes up with cool stuff, but a lot of the time it kind of puts the parameters in states that are really, yeah, just chaotic. Oh yeah, the other thing that Chaos does is it creates a chaotic pattern and it saves it down as a pattern. So, you know, this is just another example, like, once you, oh, okay, so here's another thing. Sorry, this is going all around the houses. I knew this would happen. Building your own stuff, building your own modules, building your own instrument modules, effects modules, and controller modules. So another really big bit of work to be done for the main launch is to like build a proper, fully documented SDK with, you know, a bunch of modules that you can use to really simply build your own controllers if you've got a bit of knowledge of Reaktor. Because I think that's a really important, you know, coming back to this whole idea of like creating an ecosystem that people can interact with at many different levels. This feels really important to, like, you know, to, if you want to, you can go right up to the point where you can change the whole way this whole system, you know, you can build your own modules, you can even kind of start to develop the actual underlying kind of framework that makes all the modules work together. Anyway, so Chaos is a really good example of just like, I built Chaos quite early on when I was building on the modules because I just wanted something that would introduce a bit of chaos into the system. So it's very simple under the hood. It's just like addressing, yeah, I won't go there. It's beyond the scope of this video, but it was very quick to make. And it's a really good example of how you can create something that, like, okay, so I want to introduce some proper unconstrained randomness into the instrument, and once it's done that, I want it to save a new pattern with what it's done. Anyway, enough chaos. So I will plug in, and now I'll plug in, well, I'll plug in Launch Control XL. So this is something, if you happen to have the Launch Control XL Mark III, then this controller module is in the bundle and you can use it straight away. It just basically maps the first 8 channels to the faders, and it maps these macros. Where is loop? Oh yeah, sorry. So Launch Control XL doesn't actually have any interface that shows up at all because it's literally just controlling, it's just hardware control. But it does work really well with the loop pack controller module. So let's go back into the structure and drop in loop pack, connect it up to the brain. And now we can a stuck note there. So yeah, very easy to get lost in playing arrangements on your physical controllers once you've got Loop Pack plugged in. But you can also, so the other big controller module, main controller module that I would like to draw your attention to is Wander. So let's drop Wander in, and Wander basically just turns your instrument and all the patterns you've made into this kind of constantly evolving sort of sound installation, and it'll keep on just subtly shifting through the patterns that you've saved down to create this kind of ever-evolving soundscape. And obviously, the quality of what the Wander module creates is very much down to what you save down in your patterns. So, but still, it's very plug and play. You just drop it in, wire it up, hit play, and you've just got variations on your stuff with a couple of patch cables, a bit drag and drop, and a couple of patch cables, and that's it. Okay, my lord, this is a long video, isn't it? Right. Okay, so I'm going to talk. I'm just going to whistle through the roadmap. Worth saying, by the time this video goes out, there is going to be a web page that details all the modules with some notes on them that you get now. And then this full, quite detailed roadmap of what I'm going to build for the full launch in a few months' time. So UI design, but big topic: the name, logo type, typeface, colorways, surface look and feel, spacing and padding, module form factors. Because right now the modules are all lots of different sizes, and that needs some thought and hopefully to be standardized as well. Standard faders, knobs, buttons, all of that stuff. Instrument module system, so the module UI and UX. So right now, if a module is disconnected, right now if the module is disconnected, you just see the interface. But the idea is, when it's launched, if you drop a module in that's not connected, it will just say that, it will just be a blank panel saying not connected. Control input, and a universal toolbar for each module. So there are lots of things right now, you can't solo a module, you can't bypass a module, you can't you can't, there's a bunch of stuff. So basically at the top of each module, there'll be a sort of standard toolbar of things that you can do for that module. I won't go into all the details of that because there's a lot in there. Separation of pattern, modulation, and sound sections. I touched on that earlier in the video, but basically right now, all of this pattern generation, modulation, and sound parameters are all kind of like one blob of controllers. So I've got some ideas about how to make that a lot more focused. So it's really clear what the pattern controls are, what the sound controls are, what modulation controls are. Will probably end up actually, you have to select which control group you want to have sort of maximized at any one time. Anyway, that's an interesting design conundrum, but it's going to be conundrized. Control. Yeah. Oh, visualizers. Yeah, that's a really big one. So right now, it's really hard to get a picture of what patterns are being generated by the pattern generators. There was a similar problem with Scapeshift actually, but I've got this whole concept for a proper display that will actually, you can change patterns and the entire kind of pattern, almost like a piano roll. You'll see how the event's laid out according to how you change the different parameters. So so that's coming. And input and output meters, standard stuff like that. Instrument module control connection. This is like the trigger inputs and outputs I was talking about earlier. Probably best not to go too deep into that, but the idea is to kind of like allow modules to be controlled in lots of different ways from other modules in the structure. So you can do all sorts of lots of really cool stuff. I won't even try to unpack that now, but it's coming. Parameter and scene control, ignore scene. Yeah, I don't need to talk about that. Instrument module, builder tools. Standardize. Oh yeah, so like I said, in this SDK, there is going to be there will be a suite of tools, and that will allow you to build your own modules. And I want to make that as easy as possible to kind of like build your own modules, hooking up your own oscillators and your own filters and your own envelopes and routing things the way you want to route them. I think that's really important. So that's going to be coming. System-wide framework, instrument module, system-wide framework. Big one that is in all it's in there in the data model, but it's not implemented yet, and it will be implemented for the full launch, is an undo history, a kind of structure-wide undo history. This is not an undo history, unfortunately, for the actual instrument for the patch, but it's an undo history for randomizations. So if you randomize something from anywhere in the patch, it'll basically save a sort of history point, which you can then scan back to. So, because basically, if you're going to have randomizers, you have to have undo. That is the rules. Otherwise, it's a really high risk, low trust experience. But if you have an undo history, it's a high trust, high impact, low risk experience, and that is very important, ladies and gentlemen. Control resolution framework. Yeah, okay, so this is kind of a nerdy thing, but a really important thing as well. So here's an example. If you have the loop pack controller and the Wander controller plugged in at the same time, you might be able to see where this is going. That because the loop pack is toggling playback every time you press a key, or when you release the last key, playback stops. But obviously, Wander mode, playback is running all the time. You hit play and it just keeps on running until you hit stop. So what happens if you've got both of them plugged in? Right now, they compete. So there's no way to resolve control conflicts between controller modules, and also there's no way, for example, right now, the mixer and the master and everything is all controlled by pattern recall, but there are potential circumstances where you might actually not want the mixer to be controlled by the pattern control, and you want to be controlled by something else. So I need to build this whole system for basically all these different areas that can be controlled by other things, and then a control resolution architecture for, so something is plugged in and says, I want control of the mixer. Who has control of the mixer? You've got control of the mixer. Okay, I want it. Okay, I grant it. That sort of stuff. Full ASCII handling. Full ASCII handling for all parameters, subpage, pages, and modules. Macro controls. Okay, yeah, here's another biggie. So right now, macro controls control everything, and you don't have any choice in that. There are actually two types of macros. You've got what I call absolute macros and relative macros. Absolute macros are like knobs. They've got a zero, they've got a bottom and a top, and you have to have macros like that if you want to be able to use them in your DAW, use them as automation lanes. But that's, in terms of the way, that's actually a very inflexible way of implementing macros for this, for the way this system works. So the much preferred way, the preferred implementation of macros is relative macros, which are basically based on rotary encoders. So every time you turn a knob, it's actually sending, you turn it down, it's sending decrement events. So like -1, -1, -1, -1, or if you turn it really fast, like -10, -15. And then if you turn it up, it's like +1, +1, +1, +1, da, da, da. So those macros, that's definitely the best way to control the structure. And in the final version, you can basically select whether you just want to operate on, say, the modules in one channel, or modules of a certain type, or a single module. There'll be ways to kind of like solo that, basically lock out modules so they don't respond to the macros, all of that kind of stuff. Solos, locks, focusing for the macros is a biggie. Okay, audio engine. So like if you know Scapeshift or Finalist, they both got this kind of mixing. I mean, Finalist is like way more involved, but it's yeah, basically there's this kind of auto mixing engine that resolves kind of frequency conflicts between channels, and does a bunch of mixing and mastering and auto leveling, that kind of stuff. So that engine is going to be in there. So that's another thing, that taking that off your hands, like how do you get your instrument to actually sound good in a live context? I think it's really important to have something that, again, if you want to go in and be very intentional about how you want things to be mixed, you can do that. But if you don't really care, then you can get a good sound out of the box. So the mixing engine and the mastering engine will be in there. Sends and returns channels, they're not implemented. They're sort of half implemented, but they don't actually work yet. So there'll be another 4 channels that you can just hook up effects, and then there'll be, from all the 16 instrument channels, there'll be sends. So you can send to those effects, which is, again, a much more efficient way, because you don't want to have 16 drum synths and 16 reverbs. You want 16 drum synths and 1 reverb and a send. So that is coming. I'll have pre and post fade as well. pitch and scale engine. I mentioned this earlier, but so here's what I'm going to build. It's going to be support from anything from 1 to 64 notes per pitch cycle. So by default in the West, a pitch cycle is an octave, so it's double. So, you know, if you're starting at A440, an octave above that is 880. So that is one pitch cycle. And so you'll be able to have between 1 and 64 notes in any one pitch cycle. Engine de poitrine, I'm looking at you. Support for custom pitch cycles. Yeah, so there will also be, let's say you could, you know, each pitch cycle is, half that, or let's say a pitch cycle of sort of 0.7, and then you can have 5 divisions of 0.7. I mean, who knows who needs this, but I just want to make it as flexible as possible. And then within those pitch cycles, within all the notes within a pitch cycle, you can then toggle those notes on and off, which is how you achieve, you know, the pitch. I mean, right now, everything I've shown you today is in A minor pentatonic. So it's 5 notes in the scale. So that's achieved by toggling some notes off in the scale. And then for all of the notes inside the pitch scales, you'll be able to individually tune those notes as well. So it's going to be super flexible, because I know that the kids today, they like their microtonal, don't they? And so do I. SDK and documentation. Okay, yeah. So that's the final thing in this list. I think, yeah, that's the end of the list. But I've talked about this SDK. This is a really, really important part of it. One of my ideas of, so this is everything that's going to be delivered. I've now shown you what exists and what is going to exist in a few months' time. So now to talk about the wider picture. There is a white paper, and I'll link this in the description as well. I wrote a white paper, and that was more the kind of exercise to get my head straight on what I was going to build. But I put that out to my Patreons a few months ago, and that kind of lays out a lot of the sort of design goals, and you know what, like the sort of design requirements. Like the big one for me is it should be possible to build your own instrument within half an hour from a standing start without any prior knowledge. That is like one of the things I'm going for with this system. And another big thing is really thinking about it as a from a sort of cultural point of view. This isn't just it is a product, and it is my business, and these are products, and I feed my family by making and selling these products. So your support is appreciated. I'm not into just making that the sort of be all and end all of everything. So I really love how the Eurorack scene, just the whole Eurorack scene is a massive inspiration to me. I think it's like the perfect example of how culture forms, because you've got these little modules that are made by individuals with very specific visions about how they want stuff to work, and so that is like a manufacturer's voice. They literally make these little modules which you put together into voices, and then the way you decide to combine these different modules, that's your voice. And so there is this kind of real interconnection of voices, literally and metaphorically in this world. And there are lots of different levels on which you can kind of interact with that ecosystem. You can come in and buy some very, some quite sort of simple to use modules that get you, that do that are sort of fairly plug and play. You just need to plug a few patch cables in. You're instantly getting something that is quite fun. So yeah, I'm really thinking about this, the sort of different levels. Thinking of all the people I know, all the different types of people. How deep they're into the tech. How where they sort of lie on the sort of instant gratification to deep diving world. And I think if you build systems like these intentionally, which is what I'm intending to intentionally do, then you can build an ecosystem where everybody kind of finds a place and can maybe sort of move up, start as an instant gratification, play some stuff and have some fun, go down to the next level, start patching your own instruments together, then start like building your own presets for modules, then building modules yourself, and then maybe putting together some kind of, actually maybe selling some of your modules or publishing them somewhere. So that kind of brings me on to like how I sort of see the kind of commercial model here. I mean, kind of similar to VCV Rack. There's so like in the first instance, obviously this is a paid for product because it takes a lot of time and a lot of expertise. It takes a lot of time. And it takes a lot of time to be able to take the time, to be able to learn to take the time that I took to do this. So this has to be a paid for thing because that's how I support myself. But my goal is over time. So over the next year, there will be this drop. Obviously, there's this working prototype. And then there's the full launch. And then what I'm going to do is kind of work on sort of like, almost like Lego kits of modules and sort of build different drops of modules as we go. But then also, I want to start, create more, basically like help people start to build their own modules. For this. So, I'm thinking, VCV Rack is a very good reference point here. The difference here being that, obviously here you have control modules and it's very much, a VCV Rack is designed to be just like a sort of digital emulation of Eurorack. Whereas what I'm doing here is something a bit different from that. It's like, well, what are the actual advantages you can get from being digital? But still the model, what they do there is they do some stuff for profit to keep the lights on, and then some stuff is sort of broader ecosystem. So that's what I'm thinking about now. The license for this is going to be Creative Commons non-commercial. So if you want to create stuff with all of the sort of the SDK and all the toolkits and distribute it free, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to make paid products, then we gotta talk. So yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, I mean, I've just got a zillion more ideas, but I think I should stop now. So if you've got to know this, my God. Well done, you. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Very excited to move this whole thing forward. It feels, it's like, this is good. I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited about the modules that can be built as well and the stuff that can be done with them. Cool, thank you very much. Link to get the pre-launch is in the description, £49. Full launch price is going to be £69. You will get the full launch thing and you will get this thing now. So it's a good deal, I think, and your support is much appreciated. Also, if you like this, then like it. If you subscribe this, then subscribe it. If you tell people about this, then tell people about it. You know what I mean? Anyway, I've clearly been talking too long now because I'm losing my marbles. So thank you very much, and I will see you forthwith.